The text message glowed on Julia's phone screen like a neon sign advertising my inadequacy. Ugh, stuck with boring boyfriend tonight. Uchakrishta, send help. Shock could be drinking. She'd posted it to her Instagram story, complete with a pouty selfie that made her look like a disappointed supermodel instead of a 38-year-old social media manager who couldn't figure out how to load the dishwasher. I stared at the notification from my spot on our overpriced Chicago apartment couch, watching my wife of 12 years reduce me to a hashtag. The rain drummed against our floor-to-ceiling windows, casting shadows across the hardwood floors we'd spent 3 months picking out together, back when we were still we. Not anymore, I said aloud, grabbing my jacket. Julia looked up from her phone, her perfectly contoured eyebrows knitting together in confusion. What? You're not stuck with your boring boyfriend tonight. I headed for the door, keys jingling in my hand. Problem solved. Alex, don't be dramatic. It's just social media. I paused at the threshold, looking back at her. She sat cross-legged on our cream-colored sectional, wearing yoga pants that cost more than most people's rent, and a crop top that showed off her flat stomach, the result of $500 a month Pilates classes and a metabolism that laughed in the face of her nightly wine consumption. Just social media, I repeated. Right. Because broadcasting to your 3,000 followers that spending time with your husband is torture is totally normal behavior. You're being sensitive, and you're being a bastard. The word hung in the air between us like smoke. Julia's mouth fell open, her phone clattering onto the coffee table. In 12 years of marriage, I'd never called her that. I'd thought it plenty of times, especially lately, but I'd never said it. Excuse me? You heard me. I opened the door, cool October air rushing into our climate-controlled sanctuary. Enjoy your freedom, Jules. Don't wait up. I walked out before she could respond, before I could see the tears that might or might not have been forming in her eyes. The elevator descended 30 floors, while I tried to figure out when exactly my wife had started treating me like an inconvenience instead of a partner. The answer came to me as I stepped onto Michigan Avenue, 3 months ago, when she'd started working for Matt Driscoll at Pinnacle Marketing. Matt, with his perfectly styled hair and his Tesla and his Instagram account full of motivational quotes superimposed over pictures of his abs. Matt, who'd somehow convinced Julia that her husband of 12 years was holding her back from her authentic self. My phone buzzed, a text from Julia. Where are you going? I typed back, somewhere more interesting than our apartment. Which was how I ended up at Murphy's Tavern, a dive bar 3 blocks from our building, sitting across from my best friend Ramon Gutierrez while he tried, not to laugh at my domestic drama. So, let me get this straight, Ramon said, nursing his second beer. She called you boring on Instagram, so you called her a bastard and stormed out? That's the simplified version, yeah. Ramon was 39, a cybersecurity specialist who looked like he'd stepped out of a tech startup commercial. Designer glasses, carefully maintained stubble, and enough tattoos to look edgy without scaring clients. He'd been my roommate in college, my best man at my wedding, and the only person who'd consistently called Julia out on her bullshit over the years. About time, he said. About time for what? About time you grew a spine. Ramon signaled the bartender for another round. Julia's been treating you like garbage for months, man, ever since she started working for that influencer douche. His name is Matt. I know his name. I also know he's been sliding into her DMs since day one. Ramon pulled out his phone, scrolling through Instagram. Look at this shit. He showed me Matt's latest post, a picture of him and Julia at some rooftop bar, her hand resting on his arm while they both smiled at the camera. The caption read, Great brainstorming session with my brilliant social media manager, Julia Kessler. The future is bright. Teamwork. And innovation shocked Chicago nights. The photo had been posted 2 hours ago, while I was at home, being boring. When was this taken? I asked. Tonight, according to the geotag. About 20 minutes after you left. I stared at the screen, my stomach dropping like an elevator with cut cables. Julia had complained about being stuck with me. I'd left, and she'd immediately gone out with her boss. The boss she'd been talking about constantly for 3 months. The boss who'd been helping her discover her potential and showing her what real ambition looks like. I'm an idiot, I said. No, you're not. You're just married to someone who forgot what loyalty means. Ramon put his phone away. The question is, what are you going to do about it? I finished my beer, thinking about Julia's Instagram story, about the way she'd been working late every night, about the new clothes, the new attitude, the way she looked at me like I was a stranger she'd found sleeping in her bed. I'm going to stop being boring, I said. The next morning, Julia was gone before I woke up. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter. Early meeting. Don't wait for dinner. J. No love, no XOXO. Just her initial, like she was signing a business memo. I made coffee in our pristine kitchen, staring out at Lake Michigan while I tried to figure out when my marriage had become a corporate transaction. The apartment felt different without Julia's presence, quieter, but also cleaner somehow, like the air itself was less toxic. My phone rang. Jerry, our building's doorman, his thick Chicago accent crackling through the speaker. Hey, Mr. Kessler, your wife left her purse down. Here last night. Want me to bring it up? She left her purse? Yeah, dropped it when she was getting into that Tesla. I called after her, but I don't think she heard me. A Tesla. Matt's Tesla. I'll be right down. Jerry was waiting by the front desk, Julia's designer handbag in his weathered hands. He was 60-something, a former cop who'd been working the building for 15 years and knew everyone's business better than they did themselves. She seemed pretty excited about something, Jerry said, handing over the purse. That guy she was with, he's been picking her up a lot lately. How often is a lot? Jerry glanced around the empty lobby, then leaned closer. 3, 4 times a week, always late at night, always in a hurry. I thanked Jerry and took the elevator back upstairs, Julia's purse feeling like evidence in my hands. I'd never gone through her personal belongings before. It had never occurred to me that I'd need to. But sitting on our couch, staring at the black leather bag that probably cost more than my monthly car payment, I realized how naive I'd been. Inside, I found the usual suspects: lipstick, breath mints, her regular iPhone, credit cards, and a small silver phone I'd never seen before, a burner phone. My hands shook as I powered it on. No lock screen, no security. Just a string of text messages between Julia and someone listed as M. M. Can't stop thinking about last night. You're incredible. Julia. Same here. Alex is working late tomorrow. Your place? M. Already cleared my schedule. Wear that black dress. Julia. The one you bought me? M. That's the one. Can't wait to take it off you. I scrolled up, finding weeks of messages. Explicit photos, plans for secret meetings, discussions about handling Alex, and making the transition smooth. The transition. My wife wasn't just having an affair. She was planning to leave me. I took screenshots with my own phone, my advertising background kicking in automatically. Document everything, build a case, present the evidence in a way that couldn't be disputed or dismissed. Then I called in sick to work and drove to Pinnacle Marketing. The company occupied the top 3 floors of a glass tower in River North, all exposed brick and industrial lighting designed to look creative and disruptive. I'd been there once before, for Julia's welcome party, where I'd watched Matt give a speech about synergy and brand authenticity while his employees nodded like disciples. I parked across the street and waited. At 11:30 a.m., Julia and Matt emerged from the building together, walking close enough that their shoulders touched. They got into his Tesla and drove north toward Lincoln Park. I followed them to the Palmer House Hotel. They walked through the lobby like they owned the place, Matt's hand on the small of Julia's back, guiding her toward the elevators. I watched from behind a marble pillar as they kissed in, front of the elevator doors. Not a peck on the cheek, but a full, passionate kiss that made my stomach turn. When the elevator doors closed, I approached the front desk. "Excuse me," I said to the young clerk. "I'm supposed to meet Matt Driscoll in his room, but I forgot the number." "I'm sorry, sir, but I can't give out guest information." I pulled out my wallet, extracting a $50 bill. "It's really important. Business emergency." The clerk glanced around, then quickly checked his computer. "Room 1247. I thanked him and headed for the elevators, my heart pounding like a jackhammer. I had no plan beyond confirming what I already knew, but I needed to see it with my own eyes. I needed to document the betrayal in a way that would make it impossible for Julia to gaslight me later. The 12th floor was quiet, carpeted in deep burgundy that muffled my footsteps. Room 1247 was at the end of the hall, and I could hear voices inside, Julia's laugh, followed by Matt's deeper chuckle. I pressed my ear to the door, pulling out my phone to record. "I can't believe how easy this has been," Julia was saying. "Alex is so clueless. He actually thinks I'm working late every night." "What about when you leave him?" Matt's voice. "Won't he get suspicious?" "I've been laying the groundwork for months, telling everyone how unhappy I am, how he's holding me back. When I finally pull the trigger, it'll look like I had no choice." "And the apartment?" "It's in both our names, but I've been documenting his drinking, his mood swings. My lawyer says I can claim emotional abuse, get him removed from the lease." Julia didn't just want to leave me, she wanted to destroy me in the process. "What about his job?" Matt asked. "What about it? He's a mid-level nobody at a second-tier agency. He'll be fine. I meant, will he cause problems for us professionally? Julia laughed again, the sound sharp and brittle. Alex, he doesn't have the guts to cause trouble for anyone. He'll sulk for a few months, then find some other woman to bore to exhaustion. I heard movement inside the room, the sound of a zipper being pulled down. Enough about Alex, Matt said. I didn't pay for this room to talk about your husband. I'd heard enough, more than enough. I backed away from the door, my hands shaking as I stopped the recording. 37 seconds of audio that would change everything. The elevator ride down felt like falling through space. I walked through the lobby in a daze, past the marble pillars and crystal chandeliers, out into the Chicago afternoon where the sun was shining like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, staring at my phone, listening to the recording over and over again. Julia's voice, casual and cruel, describing how she planned to dismantle my life piece by piece. Then I called Ramon. I need your help, I said when he answered. What's wrong? You sound like shit. Julia's having an affair with her boss. I have proof, and they're planning to destroy me. Silence on the other end of the line. Ramon? I'm here. Where are you? Downtown, outside the Palmer House. Stay there. I'm coming to get you. Ramon found me in the hotel bar, nursing my third whiskey and staring at my phone like it might explode. He slid into the booth across from me, his expression grim. Let me hear it, he said. I played the recording, watching his face grow darker with each word. When it finished, he sat back in his seat and whistled softly. Holy shit, Alex. She's not just cheating, she's planning to frame you. Emotional abuse, I said, the words tasting like poison. She's going to claim I was abusive to get me kicked out of my own apartment. Can she do that? If she's convincing enough, yeah, it's her word against mine, and she's been setting up the narrative for months. I finished my whiskey, the burn in my throat nothing compared to the fire in my chest. I've been so stupid. No, you've been trusting. There's a difference. Ramon signaled the bartender for 2 more drinks. The question is, what are we going to do about it? We? You think I'm going to let that bastard destroy my best friend? Not happening. Ramon leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. I do cybersecurity for a living, remember? I know how to dig up dirt on people. And I know how to make sure that dirt sees the light of day. I don't want to break any laws. We won't have to. People like Matt and Julia always leave digital footprints, social media posts, credit card records, phone logs, all perfectly legal to access if you know where to look. I thought about Julia's Instagram story from the night before, about Matt's post from the rooftop bar. They weren't even trying to be subtle anymore. What do you have in mind? Ramon smiled, the expression sharp enough to cut glass. We're going to give them exactly what they want, a public platform to showcase their relationship. Over the next 2 hours, Ramon laid out a plan that was both elegant and ruthless. We wouldn't break any laws or resort to violence. We'd simply use Matt and Julia's own arrogance against them, turning their social media obsession into a weapon. The key is timing, Ramon explained. We need to wait for the right moment, when they're feeling confident and careless. Then we strike hard and fast before they can control the narrative. What about my friends? Julia's friends? What about them? They're going to take her side. They always do. Ramon shrugged. Then they're not really your friends, are they? He was right, of course. Julia and I shared a social circle that revolved around her. Her yoga friends, her work friends, her college sorority sisters who still acted like they were 22. I'd always been the accessory husband, tolerated but not really included. There is one thing, Ramon said, pulling out his phone. Matt's married. What? Matt Driscoll, married to Chloe Driscoll, née Patterson. She's a family law attorney at Morrison & Associates. Ramon showed me a LinkedIn profile photo of a sharp-faced woman with intelligent eyes. Specializes in high-asset divorces. I stared at the photo, a plan forming in my mind. She doesn't know about the affair? Based on her social media, no. She's been posting happy couple photos as recently as last week. Send me her contact information. Alex, be careful, if you reach out to her directly. I'm not going to contact her directly, but she deserves to know what her husband is doing, and she might be a valuable ally. Ramon nodded slowly. The enemy of my enemy. Exactly. We left the hotel as the sun was setting, the Chicago skyline glowing orange and gold in the distance. I felt different than I had that morning. Clearer, more focused. The shock and hurt were still there, but they had been joined by something else. Determination. Julia wanted to play games? Fine. But she was about to learn that her boring husband had been paying attention all these years. I knew her weaknesses, her insecurities, her desperate need for social approval, and I was going to use every single one of them against her. I got home at 8 p.m. to find Julia in the kitchen, making herself a salad. She looked up when I walked in, her expression carefully neutral. "Where have you been?" she asked. "Out," I said. "Being less boring." She rolled her eyes. "Alex, about last night?" "Don't." I held up a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. "Just don't. We both know where this is heading, Jules. Let's not pretend otherwise." Something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe, or fear. She wasn't used to me being direct. "I don't know what you mean." "Sure you don't." I grabbed a beer from the refrigerator, popping it open. "How was your early meeting this morning?" "Fine. Productive." I'm sure it was. Very hands-on, I imagine. Julia's fork clattered against her bowl. "What's that supposed to mean?" I took a long drink of beer, studying her face. She looked guilty and defensive, her cheeks flushed with the telltale signs of someone caught in a lie. "Nothing at all," I said finally. "I'm going to bed. Don't wait up." I left her standing in the kitchen, confusion and anger warring on her face. Let her wonder what I knew, what I was planning. Let her spend the night trying to figure out if her boring husband had finally grown a spine, because tomorrow the real game would begin. The next morning, I woke up to find Julia already gone. Another note on the counter. "Working late again tonight. Don't wait up. J." I smiled, crumpling the note and tossing it in the trash. Predictable as always. At work, I struggled to focus on campaigns for breakfast cereals and luxury cars while my personal life imploded in slow motion. My colleague Sarah Martinez noticed my distraction during our 10 a.m. meeting. "You okay, Alex? You seem a million miles away." "Just some personal stuff," I said. "Nothing I can't handle." "If you need to talk, thanks, but I'm good." I wasn't good. I was furious and heartbroken and plotting revenge against the woman I'd loved for 12 years. But I was also more focused than I'd been in months. Every betrayal, every lie, every casual cruelty had crystallized into a single burning purpose: make Julia and Matt pay for what they'd done. At lunch, I drove to Morrison & Associates, a sleek law firm in the Loop. I didn't go inside. I just wanted to see where Chloe Driscoll worked to get a sense of who I was dealing with. The building was impressive, all glass and steel reaching toward the sky. The kind of place that charged $500 an hour and delivered results. If Chloe was half as sharp as her professional reputation suggested, she'd be a formidable ally. My phone buzzed with a text from Ramon. "Package delivered." The package was an anonymous email to Chloe Driscoll containing the audio recording from the hotel room and several screenshots of text messages between Julia and Matt. No threats, no demands, just information presented clearly and objectively. If Chloe was smart, she'd start asking questions. If she was really smart, she'd start documenting everything before making her move. That evening, I decided to test Julia's story about working late. I drove to Pinnacle Marketing at 6 p.m. and waited in the parking garage across the street. At 6:15, Julia and Matt emerged from the building together, laughing about something as they walked to his Tesla. They drove to a trendy restaurant in Wicker Park, where they sat at a window table, holding hands across the white tablecloth like they were starring in their own romantic movie. I took photos from across the street, my camera phone capturing their intimate dinner in high definition. Julia was wearing the black dress Matt had mentioned in his text messages, the one he'd bought for her, the one he wanted to take off her. They finished dinner at 8:30 and drove to Matt's apartment building, a converted warehouse in the meatpacking district. I watched them go inside, then waited in my car for 2 hours until Julia emerged, her hair mussed and her lipstick gone. She drove straight home, arriving at 11:45 p.m. I was waiting in the living room when she walked in, reading a book and sipping a glass of wine like I'd been there all evening. "How was work?" I asked without looking up. "Exhausting," she said, kicking off her heels. "We had a crisis with the Morrison account. Had to order pizza and work straight through dinner." "That's terrible," I said, turning a page. "Pizza for dinner. How romantic." Julia froze in the doorway, studying my face. "What did you say?" "I said pizza for dinner sounds terrible. You should have gone. Somewhere nice, like that Italian place in Wicker Park." The color drained from Julia's cheeks. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you don't." I closed my book and stood up, stretching like I'd been sitting there for hours. "I'm going to bed. Try not to wake me when you shower off the smell of another man." I walked past her toward the bedroom, close enough to smell Matt's cologne on her skin. She grabbed my arm as I passed, her fingers digging into my bicep. "Alex, what the hell is going on with you?" I looked down at her hand, then back at her face. "You tell me, Jules. You're the one with all the secrets." "I don't have any secrets." Everyone has secrets, I said, gently removing her hand from my arm. The question is whether they're worth keeping. I left her standing in the hallway, her face pale and confused. In the bedroom, I could hear her pacing back and forth, her phone buzzing with text messages. Probably Matt, wondering why she seemed rattled. Let them both wonder. Let them both worry. The next morning brought the first crack in their facade. Julia's phone rang at 7 a.m., jolting us both awake. She answered without checking the caller ID, her voice thick with sleep. Hello? I couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but I watched Julia's face go from confused to terrified in the space of 3 seconds. Chloe, I can explain. She sat up in bed, suddenly wide awake. No, it's not what you think. The call ended abruptly. Julia stared at her phone like it had bitten her, then looked at me with panic in her eyes. That was Matt's wife, she said. Oh? I tried to sound surprised. What did she want? She thinks Matt and I are having an affair. Are you? The question hung in the air between us like a loaded gun. Julia's mouth opened and closed several times before she found her voice. Of course not. Don't be ridiculous. Then you have nothing to worry about, I said, getting out of bed. I'm sure it's all just a misunderstanding. I showered and dressed while Julia made frantic phone calls, trying to reach Matt. From the sound of things, he wasn't answering. Smart man. When your wife finds out you're cheating, the first rule is to lawyer up and shut up. I was making coffee when Julia emerged from the bedroom, fully dressed and clutching her purse like a life preserver. I have to go, she said. Work emergency? Something like that. She was almost to the door when I called after her. Jules? What? You forgot something. She turned back, confused. I held up the burner phone, the silver device catching the morning light streaming through our windows. You left this in your purse yesterday? Julia's face went white. That's not mine. No? Whose is it then? I don't know. Someone must have put it there by mistake. I powered on the phone, scrolling through the messages between her and Matt. Interesting mistake. This person has very similar taste in lingerie, and the same address. Julia lunged for the phone, but I pulled it back, holding it out of reach. Give me that. Why? It's not yours, remember? Alex, please. Please what? Please pretend I don't know you've been seeing your boss for 3 months. Please pretend I didn't hear you planning to ruin my life. Please pretend my wife isn't a lying, cheating person. The words came out harder than I'd intended, each one hitting Julia like a physical blow. She stumbled backward, tears streaming down her face. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. I deleted the messages one by one, watching her flinch with each press of the delete button. I understand that you're a coward who was too selfish to ask for a divorce before starting a new relationship. I understand that you were planning to frame me as an abuser to steal my home and my reputation. I understand that you think I'm too weak and too stupid to fight back. I dropped the phone on the floor and crushed it under my heel, the screen shattering into a dozen pieces. But mostly, I understand that you have no idea who you're dealing with. Julia was sobbing now, mascara running down her cheeks in black streams. Alex, I'm sorry. I never meant for this to happen. It just did. No, it didn't just happen. You made choices. Every text message, every lie, every time you came home smelling like him, those were choices, and now you get to live with the consequences. I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door, stepping over the broken phone. Where are you going? Julia called after me. Out, I said, to be less boring. The Chicago Tribune building was a monument to old-school journalism, all brick and brass in a city increasingly dominated by glass towers. I sat in the lobby, waiting for my appointment with Jennifer Walsh, the paper's society reporter. Jennifer was in her 50s, with silver hair and sharp eyes that had seen every scandal Chicago's elite had to offer. She specialized in the kind of stories that appeared in the lifestyle section but left careers in ruins. Mr. Kessler, she said, extending a manicured hand, thank you for reaching out. Your message was intriguing. We found a quiet corner in the building's coffee shop, away from curious ears. I pulled out a manila folder containing printed screenshots, photos, and a transcript of the hotel room recording. I have a story for you, I said, about social media influencers, corporate ethics, and what happens when people forget that the internet is forever. Jennifer's eyes lit up as she reviewed the materials. This is quite comprehensive. Matt Driscoll is a public figure. His company has been in the news several times for their innovative campaigns, and these photos are from public places? All public. Restaurants, hotel lobbies, company events. Nothing obtained illegally. What about the recording? Recorded in a hotel hallway, no expectation of privacy in a public space. Jennifer nodded, her reporter's instincts taking over. What's your endgame here, Mr. Kessler? This will destroy both of their careers. That's the point. And you're prepared for the fallout? This will get messy. They'll fight back. I thought about Julia's plan to frame me as abusive, about Matt's casual dismissal of me as a mid-level nobody, about 12 years of marriage reduced to hashtags and cruel laughter. Let them fight, I said. I'm done being the victim in this story. Jennifer smiled, the expression sharp as a blade. I like you, Mr. Kessler. Give me 48 hours to verify everything and contact the parties for comment. This'll run in Sunday's edition. Sunday was 3 days away. 3 days for Matt and Julia to enjoy their secret romance before the whole city knew about it. I spent those 3 days in a strange state of calm, like the eye of a hurricane. I went to work, attended meetings, reviewed ad campaigns, all while my marriage disintegrated in real time. Julia barely spoke to me. She slept in the guest room, left early, came home late, and communicated primarily through terse text messages. She was probably strategizing with Matt, trying to figure out how much I knew and what I might do with the information. They were about to find out. On Saturday night, Ramon came over with takeout and beer. We sat on my couch, eating Chinese food and watching the Cubs lose to the Cardinals while Julia hid in the guest room, presumably planning her exit strategy. You nervous? Ramon asked. Terrified, I admitted, but also relieved, like I've been holding my breath for months and I'm finally about to exhale. What happens after tomorrow? I don't know. Divorce, probably. Maybe I'll move to a smaller place, start over. You could fight for the apartment. It's half yours. I looked around our pristine living space with its expensive furniture and carefully curated artwork. Everything chosen by Julia, arranged by Julia, maintained by Julia while I worked 60-hour weeks to pay for it all. I don't want it, I said. Too many bad memories. Ramon nodded, understanding. Fresh start. Fresh start. Sunday morning dawned gray and drizzly, typical October weather in Chicago. I walked to the corner newsstand and bought 3 copies of the Tribune, my hands shaking as I unfolded the lifestyle section. There it was, above the fold. Social media star's secret affair rocks Chicago marketing world. Jennifer had done her job well. The article was devastating in its precision, laying out the timeline of Matt and Julia's relationship with surgical accuracy. The photos from the restaurant, quotes from the hotel recording, details about Matt's marriage and Julia's deception. But the real blow came from the sidebar. A brief interview with Chloe Driscoll, Matt's soon-to-be ex-wife. I'm disappointed, but not surprised, Chloe was quoted as saying. Matt has a history of inappropriate relationships with subordinates. I'm just glad I found out before we started a family. Chloe had played her hand perfectly, coming across as dignified and wronged while implying that Matt was a serial predator. Her divorce filing, mentioned in the article, sought half of Matt's assets and alimony based on his pattern of infidelity and professional misconduct. I was reading the article for the 3rd time when Julia emerged from the guest room, her phone buzzing incessantly in her hand. Alex, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. We need to talk. Do we? Please. This is bad. I held up the newspaper. You mean this? Yeah, it's pretty thorough. Jennifer Walsh is a hell of a reporter. Julia's legs gave out, and she collapsed onto the couch beside me. You did this. You gave them the story. I gave them the truth. There's a difference. My career is over. Matt's career is over. The company is talking about firing both of us. Consequences, I said, folding the paper neatly. Remember those? The things that happen when you make bad choices? I know you're angry. I'm not angry anymore, Jules. I'm done. She looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw the moment she realized that her boring husband had outplayed her completely. What happens now? She asked. Now you pack your things and get out of my apartment. You can stay with Matt. Oh, wait, his wife kicked him out yesterday. Maybe one of your friends will take you in, the ones who aren't too embarrassed to be associated with you. Alex, please. Please what? Please forgive you? Please pretend this never happened? Please go back to being the clueless husband while you see other men and plot my downfall? I stood up, looking down at her tear-stained face. You wanted excitement, Julia. You wanted drama and passion and a life worth posting about. Congratulations. You got it. She tried to speak, but I held up a hand, stopping her. I want you out by tonight. Take whatever you can carry. We'll figure out the rest through lawyers. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. I left her sitting on our couch, surrounded by the wreckage of the life she'd tried to steal from me. I had one more stop to make. The signature room on the 95th floor of the John Hancock Building offered the best view in Chicago, a panoramic vista of the city stretching out to the lake, the suburbs, and beyond. It was also where Matt Driscoll was having drinks with potential investors, trying to salvage his reputation and his company after the Tribune article. I'd learned about the meeting from Jennifer Walsh, who'd been tracking the fallout from her story. Matt was in full damage control mode, spinning the affair as a personal matter that wouldn't affect his business relationships. He was wrong about that. I took the elevator to the 95th floor, dressed in my best suit and carrying a leather portfolio that made me look like I belonged. The hostess directed me to the bar area where I could see Matt holding court at a corner table, his voice animated as he gestured toward the windows. The key to crisis management, he was saying to three men in expensive suits, is controlling the narrative. Yes, I made some personal mistakes, but that doesn't change the fact that Pinnacle Marketing delivered record results this quarter. I approached the table, my footsteps silent on the plush carpeting. "Excuse me," I said, my voice carrying just enough to turn heads. "Matt Driscoll?" Matt looked up, his face going pale when he recognized me. "Alex, what are you doing here?" "I wanted to meet the man who's been with my wife." The words cut through the ambient noise of the restaurant like a gunshot. Conversations at nearby tables stopped mid-sentence. The three investors looked between Matt and me with the fascination of people watching a car accident. "Alex, this isn't the place." Matt started to stand, but I put a hand on his shoulder, pushing him back down. "Actually, this is the perfect place. Public, well-lit, plenty of witnesses." I smiled at the investors. "Gentlemen, allow me to introduce myself. Alex Kessler, husband of Julia Kessler, Matt's social media manager and mistress." "You're drunk," Matt said, his voice tight with panic. "Security. I'm stone sober, and I have some information you might find interesting about Mr. Driscoll's business practices." I opened my portfolio, pulling out a stack of documents. Credit card receipts showing company funds used for hotel rooms and expensive gifts for female employees, text messages discussing the exchange of favors for promotions, a pattern of harassment and misconduct stretching back 3 years. The documents were real. Ramon had helped me piece together Matt's digital trail over the past week. Every receipt, every inappropriate message, every abuse of power, all laid out in chronological order. "This is harassment," Matt said, but his voice cracked on the last word. "No, this is accountability." I handed copies of the documents to each investor. "Matt here has been running Pinnacle Marketing like his personal dating service, using company resources to pursue relationships with subordinates. I thought you should know before you invested your money in a lawsuit just waiting to happen." One of the investors, a silver-haired man in his 60s, flipped through the papers with growing disgust. "Jesus Christ, Matt, is this true?" "It's taken out of context." "Hotel receipts are pretty hard to take out of context," I said, especially when they're accompanied by text messages describing what happened in those rooms. Matt lunged at me then, his composure finally cracking. "You son of a bastard!" I stepped aside, letting his momentum carry him past me. He stumbled, knocking, over a chair and sending drinks flying across the table. The investor scrambled backward as Matt tried to regain his balance, his face red with rage and humiliation. "Security!" someone shouted. 2 uniformed guards appeared within seconds, moving to restrain Matt as he continued to shout threats at me. "This isn't over!" he yelled as they dragged him toward the elevator. "You hear me? This isn't over!" "Actually," I called after him, "I think it is." The restaurant had gone completely silent, every patron staring at the drama unfolding in the corner. I straightened my tie, gathered my papers, and nodded politely to the investors. "Gentlemen, I apologize for the disruption. Enjoy your evening." I walked to the elevator with as much dignity as I could muster, my heart pounding like a jackhammer. As the doors closed, I could hear the buzz of conversation resuming behind me, dozens of people already pulling out their phones to share what they'd witnessed. By the time I reached the ground floor, videos of Matt's meltdown were probably already spreading across social media. The same platforms he'd used to build his reputation would now be the instruments of its destruction. I walked out into the Chicago night, the cool air hitting my face like a blessing. My phone was buzzing with text messages. Ramon, Jennifer Walsh, even some of Julia's friends who'd somehow gotten hold of the story. But I ignored them all. Instead, I walked to Navy Pier, where I'd proposed to Julia 12 years earlier. The Ferris wheel was lit up in red and blue, reflecting off the dark water of Lake Michigan. I thought about the man I'd been that night, young, hopeful, convinced that love was enough to overcome any obstacle. He'd been naive, but he'd also been brave in his own way, willing to bet everything on the promise of forever. That man was gone now, replaced by someone harder and more calculating. Someone who understood that sometimes the only way to win was to burn everything down and start over. My phone rang. Julia's number. I answered on the fourth ring. "Alex, please," she said, her voice thick with tears. "We need to talk. I'm at the apartment, but I can't get in. Did you change the locks?" "Yes." "Please, I have nowhere else to go. Matt won't answer his phone, and my friends, they're not taking my calls." I looked out at the lake, watching the lights of a cargo ship moving slowly toward the horizon. "You should have thought of that before you decided to destroy my life," I said. "I know I hurt you. I know I made terrible mistakes. But please don't do this. Don't throw away 12 years of marriage." "I didn't throw it away, Jules. You did. The moment you decided I was boring. The moment you started seeing another man. The moment you planned to frame me as abusive to steal my home. I never would have gone through with that. I was angry. I was confused. You were recorded, Julia. Your own words, in your own voice, describing exactly how you planned to destroy me. There's no walking that back." Silence on the other end of the line. Then quietly, "What do you want from me?" "Nothing," I said. "I want nothing from you ever again." "Alex." I hung up and turned off my phone. Tomorrow there would be lawyers and paperwork and the messy business of untangling a life we'd built together. There would be questions from friends and family, gossip and speculation, the long process of rebuilding my reputation and my sense of self. But tonight, I was free. I walked back toward the city, past the tourists and street performers, past the restaurants where Julia and I had shared countless dinners, past the building where we'd lived as husband and wife. I didn't look back. 3 months later, I was living in a one-bedroom apartment in Lincoln Park, working at a new agency that appreciated my particular talents for crisis management and reputation repair. Julia had moved to Los Angeles, where she was trying to reinvent herself as a lifestyle blogger. Matt's company had folded, and he was facing multiple lawsuits from former employees. Chloe Driscoll had gotten everything she'd asked for in the divorce and had sent me a bottle of champagne with a note. "Thank you for your assistance in a delicate matter." I kept the bottle on my kitchen counter, unopened. A reminder that sometimes the best revenge isn't getting mad, it's getting smart. And sometimes the most boring person in the room is the one you should fear the most,